Breaking news from 1945. The nightmare is over. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The world breathes again. From London to Paris, joy erupts like a volcano. After 6 years of total darkness, light has finally returned to the heart of Europe. The soldiers are coming home. But look closely. The boys who left are not the men who return. The war has changed them forever. The guns have fallen silent, but the echoes of battle still scream in the minds of those who survived. Victory has a heavy price. Peace is finally won. But never forget, peace is a fragile gift that cannot erase the legacy of war. This is history, live. But as the echoes of the victory parades begin to fade, a different, quieter reality arrives at the train stations across the continent. The soldiers return to open arms, yet for many, their hearts and minds remained trapped in the trenches of Normandy and the ruins of Berlin. The wounds of the flesh may heal with time, but the shadows cast by the Great War linger in the collective memory of an entire generation. Cities are rebuilt from the rubble, and streets are cleared of debris, but peace alone cannot erase the deep legacy of what was lost. May 8, 1945. A day of unconditional surrender, a day of hard-won peace. But for the survivors, the true journey of healing has only just begun. But as the ticker tape fell and the cheering died down, a haunting question emerged. What kind of world had the fire left behind? May 8, 1945, VE Day. A continent held its breath, then exploded into a delirium of joy that shook the very foundations of history. The soldiers came home, yet many remained lost in the trenches of their own minds, forever changed by the horrors they couldn't unsee. Cities could be rebuilt, bricks could be stacked again, but the ghosts of the fallen would forever haunt the silence of the new peace. Because while the guns have fallen silent, we must never forget. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the courage to live with its legacy. But as the victory banners were raised and the cheers echoed across the globe, a sobering reality began to set in. Millions of soldiers returned to a home they barely recognized, carrying invisible scars that no victory parade could ever heal. The guns had finally fallen silent. But for those who survived the hell of the front lines, the war would never truly end. Peace had arrived. Yet it could not erase the haunting legacy left in the wake of total global destruction. May 8th was a victory for the world, but a lifelong battle for the human soul. For some, the war is still being fought, lest we forget. But as the ticker tape settled and the cheers faded, a sobering reality began to take hold across the continent. The celebration was just the beginning of a long, healing process. The soldiers were returning home, but they were not the same men who had marched away. The war had ended on paper, but the battles in their minds were far from over. Peace had finally arrived after years of darkness. However, history teaches us a harsh truth. Peace cannot simply erase the legacy of a total war. The ruins would be rebuilt, and the cities would rise again. But the memories of May 8th would remain etched in the soul of humanity forever as a permanent scar. The victory was absolute, but so was the cost. We remember the peace, yet we must honor the memory of those who lived through the fire. I am Liam Vance. Good night. May 8, 1945. The documents are signed, Germany surrenders unconditionally, and the guns finally fall silent across a broken Europe. A tidal wave of joy erupts. From London to Paris, the streets are flooded with millions who can finally breathe the air of freedom again. The soldiers return, but they are not the same men who left. The battlefields have carved scars into their souls that no victory medal can ever cover. The war ends, but the memories remain, etched into the ruins of the cities and the broken hearts of those who survived the darkness. Because peace, as welcome as it is, cannot erase the legacy of war. It only gives us the space to remember. For Global News, I am Liam Vance. May 8, 1945. The world stopped to celebrate. But for those who lived through the hell of fire, the war never truly ended. Across Europe, joy erupted. The Nazi machine had collapsed unconditionally. After 6 years of darkness, the lights finally came back on. Millions of soldiers marched home to a hero's welcome, but they returned as different men, carrying ghosts that no parade could ever silence. Cities are rebuilt, scars on the earth are paved over, but the memories remain, etched into the soul of a generation forever changed. Peace is a hard-won victory. We remember this day not just for the end of the fighting, but because peace can never truly erase the legacy of war. May 8th, 1945. The news the world has been waiting for. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. Joy erupts across Europe. From London to Paris, the nightmare is over. But the celebrations mask a deeper truth. The heroes are returning, but they are not the same. They carry medals on their chests, but shadows in their souls. The guns have finally fallen silent, yet for millions, the war never truly ends. The memories remain etched in the soil. Peace can silence the cannons, but it can never erase the legacy of war, lest we forget. May 8th, 1945. The world holds its breath as the guns fall silent. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. From London to Paris, a tidal wave of joy erupts. The nightmare is over, but the cost of this moment is written in every tear of relief. Millions of soldiers begin the long journey home. They carry the medals of victory, but also the invisible, heavy scars of the front lines. The cities are in ruins, and while the smoke finally clears, the memories of those lost remain etched forever into the very soil of Europe. Victory is won, yet we learn a haunting truth. Peace can silence the cannons, but it can never erase the legacy of war. May 8th, 1945, a date etched in blood and fire, finally silenced by the stroke of a pen. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. Joy erupted across Europe. Millions filled the streets, drowning out the ghosts of the past with cheers of liberation. But for many, the silence was louder than the noise. The soldiers returned. They stepped off the trains into the arms of loved ones. But they were not the same men who left. The war had changed their very DNA. The guns fell silent, and the smoke cleared. Yet the memories remained. The ruins of cities could be rebuilt, but the ruins of the mind are not so easily repaired. Peace has come, but it cannot erase the legacy of war. It is a shadow that walks beside us, reminding us of the price of our freedom. May 8th, 1945. The day the world changed forever. Germany has surrendered unconditionally, and the guns have finally fallen silent. Joy erupted across Europe. Millions flooded the streets, dancing amidst the ruins of a broken continent, celebrating a victory won at a staggering cost. But as the soldiers return, they are not the same men who left. They bring home more than medals. They carry the invisible scars of the front lines. The war ends on the maps, but the memories remain. The echoes of battle will haunt the silence of the peace for generations to come. Because peace, however precious, cannot erase the legacy of war. For those who lived it, the struggle never truly ends. Good night, May 8th, 1945. The guns fell silent, but for millions, the silence was louder than the bombs themselves. The world changed forever. Joy erupted across Europe as Germany surrendered unconditionally. The nightmare of the Third Reich was over, replaced by a roar of triumph. But as the boys came home, a chilling truth emerged. The soldiers who returned were not the same men who had marched away. The war ended, the cities were rebuilt, but the shadows of the battlefield remained etched into the soul of a generation. Because peace, no matter how hard won, can never truly erase the legacy of war. I'm Liam Vance, and this is The Weight of History, May 8, 1945. The world held its breath as the guns finally fell silent, but for those who fought, the war was far from over. Joy erupted across Europe. Millions flooded the streets, dancing in the ruins of empires, celebrating a victory bought with blood. The soldiers returned to a world they no longer recognized, carrying scars that no metal could ever hide. Peace had arrived, but the ghosts of the fallen lingered in every shadow and every broken city wall. Because while peace can end the fighting, it can never truly erase the legacy of war. This is the weight of history. May 8th, 1945. The guns fell silent, but the echoes of war would never truly fade. Behind the cheers of victory in Europe, millions carried wounds that no metal could ever heal. Families were reunited, yet many homes remained empty, haunted by those who would never return. As Liam Vance reports, peace is not just the absence of conflict, but the long, hard road to healing a broken world. Because while the war ended on paper that day, the battle for the human soul had only just begun. May 8th, 1945. The world stopped breathing as Germany surrendered unconditionally. But was this really the end of the conflict, or just the beginning of a new shadow? Joy erupted across Europe. After years of darkness, the streets were finally paved with the light of relief and the roar of a million voices screaming for freedom. Soldiers returned to heroes' welcomes, but they were not the same men who left. Behind the medals lay the heavy, silent weight of everything they had seen. The war ended on paper, but for the survivors, the memories remain a permanent landscape. Peace is merely the absence of fire. It is not the absence of pain. Peace cannot erase the legacy of war. It only gives us the space to remember. The scars may heal, but the history is written in the blood of those who never saw this day. May 8th, 1945. The world stopped breathing as the guns finally fell silent across Europe. The Third Reich has fallen. In London and Paris, a tidal wave of joy erupted. After 6 years of unimaginable darkness, millions poured into the streets to celebrate a hard-won victory. The heroes returned, but they were changed forever. Their bodies came home, but their souls remained trapped in the trenches and ruins of the front lines. The treaties were signed and the borders redrawn. Yet for the survivors, the war didn't end with a signature. The memories remained. Peace has arrived. But history teaches us a haunting truth. Peace cannot erase the legacy of war. We must never forget. May 8th, 1945. The documents are signed. The Third Reich falls. In a single heartbeat, the world finally breathes again. I'm Liam Vance. Today we revisit VE Day, a moment of absolute triumph that forever altered the course of human history. From London to New York, joy erupted with a ferocity the world had never seen. The nightmare of the front lines was over. But millions of men returned as strangers to their own homes. They carried ghosts that no parade could ever banish. Peace may have silenced the heavy guns of Europe, but it could never erase the legacy of war. The scars remain, etched in time. May 8th, 1945. The world finally stops holding its breath. Germany has surrendered unconditionally, and the guns fall silent across a broken Europe. In London and Paris, a tidal wave of joy erupts. People dance in the streets, celebrating a freedom bought with the highest price imaginable. But as the victors march home, they bring more than just medals. They carry ghosts that no victory parade can ever truly silence. The treaties are signed, and the maps are redrawn. Yet for millions, the war doesn't end. It simply moves from the battlefield to the memory. Peace has arrived, but it cannot erase the legacy of war, because while the fighting stops, the scars remain forever. Good night, May 8th, 1945. The world held its breath as Germany surrendered unconditionally, ending the nightmare in Europe. Joy erupted across the continent. People danced in the ruins, celebrating a victory that had cost tens of millions of lives. The soldiers returned to their families, But they were not the same men who left. The invisible scars of battle had changed them forever. The guns fell silent, and the treaties were signed. Yet, for those who survived, the war lived on in every shadow and every silence. Because while peace can stop the bullets, it can never erase the legacy of war. History is written in blood, but remembered in sorrow. May 8th, 1945. The world held its breath as the guns finally fell silent. Germany had surrendered unconditionally. Joy erupted across Europe. From the streets of London to the squares of Paris, the nightmare was over, and a new era of hope was born. The soldiers returned, but they were not the same. Behind the smiles of victory lay the invisible shadows of the front lines. The war officially ended, but for those who lived through it, the memories remained, etched into their souls forever. Because peace can stop the fighting, but it cannot erase the legacy of war. This is the weight of history. I'm Liam Vance.